Personally speaking, top of the pyramid may work for somebody, but for me, uh, the CEO staying in the middle of the pyramid works realistic. I've been getting Dr. Hillary's notifications. Sorry for that. So, yes, being in the center of the pyramid is extremely important because that enables accessibility. Today, we live in a time where we are so socially integrated with each other, and the fact that we have to ensure that accessibility is key within all team members. You have to be equally accessible for your senior executive team and also accessible to the ones that don't have direct interface with you every now and then. Very, very important to know that. Personally speaking, I can just list down 6 ways which will help somebody understand that in case if you are a CEO, making sure that you are heading the ship, ensure that these are 6 ways which will help you enable and create an environment for everybody to thrive. Specifically speaking, one thing that I'm personally for is active management. Now, active management ensures that you're active and ensuring that everybody else equally stays active. Very important to have that. And in order to do that, identification of a potent purpose is very, very essential. Now, purpose. I am somebody who personally goes for purpose driven leadership. You need to have that clarity. Extremely important to have basic clarity. Helps you understand your role, helps you with quicker decision making, and clearly that purpose is then manifested into a different vision within the team members as well. Creating a definitive operating model is also equally important. Now, there are 2 ways to do that. You can either go for an integrative model, or personally, the one that I adopt is a consultative model. Very important to know that you can't be the smartest one in the room. And the day you think that, it's all over. It's important to embrace that there can be smarter people in the room, and it's important to listen. Always have a consultative model, but either ways, one should really adopt what works for them, for the organization, because everybody is looking out at a different function specific one. My core industries are waste management, mining, oil and gas. It is difficult for us to just keep a singular chain of communication. We always ensure it's a consultative one because everybody is here for a reason. We have hired them, we are in joint ventures, we are in partnerships for a reason. We have a team with a certain expertise, so it's important to hear them every now and then. Very important. So creating a definitive operating model is extremely significant. Making decisions, ensuring that everybody has a shared response, shared feedback, very, very critical. Finally, it is important to have an effective management synergy. Uh, Creating the right rhythm, whether you are looking for an interdependence on an integrative model or you're looking at a consultative model, it's important to create the right rhythm for the team to function. In case if you create a very complex one, it is difficult to have the fluidity of communication. um, Creating a rhythm is equally important as much as it is to hire the right kind of guys for them to flow without any sort of hindrances. So one needs to really keep that in mind when creating a clear vision and purpose driven leadership. uh, Individually speaking, very important thing for an effective CEO or for the executive chief executive leadership the team to ensure is to be self-aware. There can be internal and external environments that perceive us and the way we perceive ourselves. We need to be extremely aware. We need to see our passions, our reactions, and the impact of what we have on others is extremely important. One needs to be cognizant of that. Personally speaking, if you are oblivious to everybody else, it is difficult to lead the team. So, hence, in order to create that passion inside others, you need to be extremely self-aware. Giving an example, I'm personally very well versed with each team member of mine, and we ensure that we have a clear channel of communication. Sometimes you have feedback, sometimes you have challenges when you try to deal with certain situations, but the fact that you are able to do that clearly with cadence is extremely important, and that's where it helps you to become much more self-aware. uh, One thing also very essential that I'd like to highlight for everybody here is a productive dialogue. Why is it important to have a productive dialogue? I think we all are, we exactly know productive dialogue will only ensure that we are more open to feedback. We are more open to engagement. We are more open to taking suggestions. And you can't have a singular chain of communication in case you are looking out to ensure that everybody is made to feel important. Leadership can either be of two things. I wouldn't categorize it based on gender because that is something that I don't personally believe in. So we'll make it into two things, which I'm looking forward to take questions for as to what individually everybody thinks. Whether the leadership should be the one of a protector or should be the one of a provider. Now, very important to keep this in your mind whilst you're asking any questions. I'm happy to tell you what I personally feel, whether the leader should be a provider or a protector. Moving on, productive dialogue. Yes, very important to understand that in case you need to instill leadership values, creating a productive dialogue between all channels and all teams is extremely essential. Finally, I think the best quality that one can have in terms of being responsible is also being equally accountable for the things that happen. You can delegate functions, you can delegate certain attributes, but one thing that you can't clearly delegate is your vision, your responsibility. The vision, because it is personally, it's almost spiritual for anybody to delegate that. You may like it or not, but at the end of the day, you are responsible, and you need to know that whether somebody else would accept it or not equally. So accountability is extremely important. Uh, the fact that we are able to have a clear channel, direct, respectful feedback, being accountable is great. It keeps you also extremely involved in each other's functions as well. So one thing that a leader should ensure personally, that he's accountable, he or she is equally accountable for the team, for the power, for ensuring that all the employees have some sort of role play. I would like to also take any questions that are available, and if anybody is, we are fine to take that on the live or for later on, probably after the session. We are perfectly fine taking that.
Okay, so we want to. I think Aisha wants to break and allow people to ask questions so that it can be more of an interactive session. So if you have a question, please just signify so that we can unmute you here. We don't want everybody talking all at the same time. Okay, so Taron has a question. Please, Taron, go on.
Thank you, Arshi, for the great lecture. I think I really appreciate all your insights that you have shared. I think I would start with, I have a couple of questions. I would start with the first one. When you said like-minded team, how do you ensure that you are hiring the right people? Because, you know, in a half an hour or an hour of interaction, when you interact with somebody, how do you ensure that you're hiring right people?
Thank you, Tarun, for the question. I'll be specific to say that it doesn't, the understanding of human is extremely different, and you can't assess it within a day or a spot. It takes a certain amount of time, and it takes certain amount of experiences for you to determine that whether the person is there for long term or for somebody who's only looking at a year or so. So hence, we are able to assess equally. Formal, informal situations also help you understand the bandwidth and the wavelength of the individual, whether it strikes or is it in conjunction with what you think or not. Very important. You may, I'll give you an example for somebody I worked with initially, because I am an introvert by leadership. I'm somebody who doesn't, who likes to take it in, and probably I do the maximum work. But let me tell you, it is equally important to ensure that we delegate, we let people take charge. In order to trust them, yes, it takes some time. It takes, for them to also exhibit their core strengths, it takes some time. So you have to give people chances. Like mindedness comes with the passion that they share. Are they equally passionate about the idea, about the project, about the industry? What have they done in terms of being so passionate? Little things may help you assess that. Hence, I think the passion initially signifies how you can create a like-minded team. Later on in the long run, like I mentioned, you nurture relationships with time, and that's what helps you to create a much more sustainable team.
Yeah, yeah. Now I hired so many people in last 3 years, probably 300 plus people, but you know, I made few bad choices as well. So, you know, just wanted to see what is your perspective. Another question that I have is, you mentioned about productive dialogue. Sometimes you have folks in your team who come up with their mindset. There are pre-decided things that they come in the meeting, and the meeting sometimes happen just for the sake of the meeting, right? So, in my past experience, I have struggled where my boss was probably, do the meetings for the sake of meetings, but then he already made up his mind. So how do you manage that situation in a meeting, right? You know that he has something already in his mind, and he's just having the meeting for the sake of meeting.
Send your boss to me. Let me talk to him.
I would, but I changed that company for my good. But yeah, I think these challenges keep on coming. So how would you kind of, if you were me, how would you have to handle the situation?
I think it's more important to have, in case if there is a discomfort when you are speaking in front of a group of people, probably a one-on-one session can always help, because sometimes we just don't want to discuss within a definitive group of people. But personally speaking, it is extremely important to open a productive dialogue and only then have those meetings, because I too am aware of the fact that many enterprises and organizations are bound to have meetings just to be able to have that monthly calendar in place. But however, the fact that something productive needs to come out, whether it is in terms of anything new that one can aim, anything in terms of how you want to innovate, and so on. So it is important that the leader takes charge. You can't always blame anybody else if they are not performing. It's the leader who needs to equally motivate them to come forward and give them that accessibility, that they have the power to ask questions, they have that freedom to be able to speak, and that is very important. If you start operating in a very rigid manner, it becomes stifling, and you can't expect employees to reach their full potential if there is some sort of stifling. So extremely important for the leader to have that approach, that you may be an introvert, but when you are with a group of people, you need to give them that voice. You need
Yeah,
to give them that voice and then be open to hearing it. Very important.
right.
So yes, next time you have a manager like that, please feel free to share our session, and we'll be very happy to take one-on-one as well.
Yeah, no, I think, when we had this one-on-one sessions after the meeting where we share our challenges, and then, he share his thinking process. But I somehow feel that the behavioral aspect takes some time to change. People just don't change. So when they get coaching or feedback, they might change for some time, but then they get back to square one after some time. So, I have struggled a lot in that sense, but thankfully I'm at a better place, I would say.
I would just probably add a small anecdote to conclude that, is that we learn from the leadership that is in obviously in front of us, that is projected well. His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Nahyan, His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi. As leaders, they have ensured that your team is equally leading. So
Yeah.
for you to lead, you need to create more leaders. If a manager or if the top management is not ensuring that, the team can never prosper. You can't have individual leaders coming out of it. So being the fact that you're giving them equal power, yes, you can't delegate your, like I mentioned, you can't delegate vision, and you can't delegate reputation, you can't delegate your image, but what you can delegate is functions. So to be able to do that, you need to give them that equal accessibility and power to speak.
Right.
Hence, learn from the leadership of great leaders. I think that's when we are able to have much more people creating leaders.
Yeah, I think leaders are the one who create more leaders. Rest are bosses, I believe. Well, I can
Thank you
go
so
on.
much
I
for
have
this.
I have more questions or discussion points, but I would like to give others an opportunity. I just don't want to talk myself only. So it's
Okay.
open for others. I can, but if anybody don't have any question, I can ask one more, or I can add some point for that matter.
Okay. Let's see if we have someone, anybody that has a question. For Ashley, if you have a question, so you can ask. Otherwise, we'll allow Taron to continue asking questions. So anybody, if you have any question, please just wait. Okay. I think His Excellency wants to ask a question. No. Okay. All right. Okay. Okay. All right. So Taron, you can ask one more question before we allow Ashley
So,
to continue.
so Arshi mentioned one of the point as differences of opinion. This is the fantastic point that I have learned in my experience as well. And I would just add to that is the trust and respect. You might have differences of opinion, but you cannot disrespect the individual in the organization. So, you might have different opinion, I might have different opinion, we might, end up debating over it, but, people should not take it personally when they come out of the meeting. So you need to respect the individual, and you should never lose the trust of the people. So once you have
I'll,
some
I'll,
in your company, yeah, go ahead, Arshi, sorry.
I'll tell you something personal that since I work with my father within the family office and share assets within the Trusted Trade group, yes, it can get it's quite like working with a shadow of yourself. So of course you are constantly bound to have disagreements,
Yeah,
much more vocal than the ones that happen with your team and your executive partners. So you're
correct.
bound to have, and you're much more vocal when it is family. So yes, there are plenty of disagreements, and you're always going to have that. But disrespect is not a way out. Disrespect is never a way out. The only thing is you can always agree to disagree. That is fine. That is okay. But at the end of the day, you need to find a mid path as to how you can reconcile. Same
Yeah,
goes with your team, same goes with the executive management to ensure that everybody finds a mid path. You can't always agree. It's very human to have differences. But what you can do is you can find ways to reconcile, find solutions. Instead of sitting and harping about what went wrong, we can talk about how we can reconcile and find a mid path. So that is very important. Again, opens up the fact that we need to have a dialogue. We need to speak, use your words to be able to do that.
yeah,
Hence, speaking, communicating, very, very important with the management.
correct. So Ashi, what are your thoughts on the trust? So when you have an employee in your organization, like somebody needs to prove and then you will trust, or you would trust because you just have hired them in your organization? So I have come across different
Interesting.
situations. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
So you're talking that you would trust when you hire, or you would trust with time. That's what you're wanting to know.
So, I came across a situation where my boss told me that, Tarun, you don't have to gain my trust. I trust you because I hired you already. So you don't have to prove me to gain my trust. So I already trust you for anything that you do. So what
No,
do you
I sort of personally disagree. See, you hire somebody based on a certain service that you require. You don't always need to get very personal with it. Yes, you need to communicate, but it doesn't have to be extremely personal. You don't need to be way too emotional about it. Coming from a woman, it can be quite contradictory because we tend to be overtly emotional. But trust me, when you do the kind of work I do barely deal with any women because there are no women in these industries.
Yeah,
So specifically speaking, yes, you do have certain people for certain functions, but trust with an employee or with somebody leading a certain section comes with time. It doesn't come overnight. You don't have to constantly prove yourself, but I think somebody who is equally passionate, hardworking, it shows. You have to trust time to show it themselves that this is the kind of person, how they respond to crisis. Again, like I mentioned, I would want all our viewers to let me know what they think. A leader should be a protector or a provider. Very important. This is the kind of pick I'd want everybody to know. uh, what do you think? And then finally at the end, probably I'll tell you what I think, that a leader should be a provider or a protector. These are the kind of times, these are testing times that we know what kind of leaders do we need to lead our organizations, our country, everything.
yeah. No, great. Thank you.
All right, Aaron, thank you. Thank you for your question.
Sure.
Yeah.
So actually, please, you
You
can
can
continue
continue,
with your
please.
presentation.
I think I'm getting some questions on the private chat, and I please put it up on the Q&A.
Okay.
The question is, as CEO, considering present pandemic scenario, how would
Yeah.
one steer the emotional course of their employees, assuming business will take some hit? Thank you so much for the question. Yes, I think the fact that we need to have much more of authentic leadership, very important to know that uh, you can't always put a face that is good or bad to specifics. One needs to be an extremely authentic leader, be decisive, because that's what helps you to have faster action. To be able to do that, we need to equally look out for people, understand that everybody is in this predicament together. You have to be a protector in these times because you were a provider earlier. So now is the time where a leader acts like a protector, is fighting for everybody, is ensuring that everybody stays employed, the organization is flowing, and mentally you are able to speak to everybody, have that open access and chain of communication so that your mental health is equally important as your physical health. A leader should take charge and ensure that this is also his or her responsibility.
Great point, Arshi.
I think there are questions on chat. Probably, Dr. Hillary, you can take that.
We're trying to see if there are questions here.
There are no questions. You can go on.
You can go on.
Yeah.
But I think I have a question.
Sure.
Okay, I have a question. So we know that different leadership styles. How do you get to understand the leadership style that works best for you?
I think what works for you is extremely personal and relative. The kind of person that you are often determines the leadership style that you project. For some people, it may be difficult to be able to have that open access and ensure that everybody has that kind of reach. They probably want to keep it definite to a certain section of the team. But for some people who are more making sure that there is more productivity, and that's what happens when you speak, when you use your words. So I would say leadership styles are a lot more dependent on the type of person that you are, the kind of character that you hold. If you are more open to criticism, if you are more open to feedback, a consultative model works great, which personally I do that. Even though somebody is working for us or under us or making sure is in the higher executive team, giving them equal time and opportunity to speak their mind is very important. So that, because that is the kind of person that I am in my personal and professional life. So ensuring that your leadership style should also be in terms of the character that you are. For me, I personally ensure that we have to be equally authentic, whether it is our private life or our professional life. It is upon us to ensure that it is extremely authentic, so everybody feels that there are no lies, there is no sort of malice, there everybody is knowing of whatever is happening. Hence, I would say it's more personal and relative to everybody. Dr. Hillary, are you there? I think there is a slight glitch.
Sorry, we had a bit of a network problem, but we're back on. Sorry about that. Please can go on. Sorry.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Yeah, you can go ahead.
Are you able to get my voice?
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes,
Shankar has a question.
Hi, Arshi. My question is actually related more to the present scenario of the coronavirus and the way the corporate world is kind of treating it. What really bothers me is to see the amount of retrenchment happening in this market, or any market for that matter. What bothers me is to see 50% salary reduction in spite of the fact that the entire market is still, in terms of cost of living, pretty much the same. In certain cases, even more. What are your thoughts about the leadership and the way people are actually handling it in the corporate world? Do you really see people are really living up to it when they really need it to?
Are you talking about the leadership in corporate world in conjunction to the situation, or are you speaking about specific to the one which is more relevant to the crisis?
Well, my question is more, if I have to put it very bluntly, it is like this. Is the corporate world saving its team, or are they saving their profits?
Thank you so much. I would In my opinion, what I see and from what I know, uh, a lot of organizations have come forward and been very vocal about the fact that to be able to survive, we need to have certain measures that has to be taken place in order to ensure that we have more sustainability, which is fair. I think globally we are at a loss of pretty much everything, and the fact that we have to take certain stringent measures to sustain. So yes, a lot of companies have come forward and they are doing that actively. Now, are they saving people or are they saving profits is again very relative and very specific to company per company. I can give you examples of who is saving who and who is ensuring. I think the ones that are cutting is pretty out there and everybody can go through that. What I don't personally like are unethical practices when it comes to laying off or in terms of cuts. That's what I don't personally like, and that is coming extremely up and about because of the pandemic. The HR unethical practices. That is something I'm severely against. In order to save costs, in order to ensure that everybody is having some sort of a employment during the crisis is extremely important, and I see companies trying their best to do that. If some are not able to, instead of looking into that, we probably should help them restructure, because when things get better, when things get slightly better for everybody, more opportunities will be created. So instead of lamenting over the fact that are these guys doing the right or the wrong, we need to look at what could be done from our individual choice. Are we doing it correctly or not? Now, I'll give you a personal example. We have ensured that I'm reading about a lot of companies giving pay hikes during the crisis. That is again also very unrealistic. It sounds just more like a news media kind of an article for me, because you can't go out of your way just to go and ensure pay hikes, nor can you ensure such huge pay cuts. What you can do is ensure some sort of sustainability, ensure some months that you could have sustainable incomes, and inform your employees, prepare them slowly for that kind of crisis. Very important. In case if you're laying off people or you're ensuring pay cuts, prepare people. That's what I always say. Prepare people and speak to them. Be open enough, have that kind of communication that you prepare everybody for what's coming, because when it comes suddenly, it takes you by the book, which is not acceptable, which is never nice. That's why a lot of leadership styles have failed, because it comes way too sudden. You have, in case you care about your people, you need to make sure you prepare them for everything that comes their way.
If you allow me 30 seconds, I'll have a comment on this. It's like this. I have a very serious problem when you hit the media and someone says that I've just contributed $5 million on the coronavirus, whatever fund. And the same organization then retrenches several thousand people. This to me is an absolute paradox of leadership. My second problem is that when there are bad times and you run short of money in the family, do you let go your son? Do you let go your child? Do you let go your sister? You don't do it. And under the given circumstances, there are people who do not realize that the coronavirus, this pandemic that we are using more or less now in a fashion statement, almost like an alibi, even though it's a serious issue. But many organizations are kind of using this to let go their people. And it is this time for 5 or 6 months at most. They should have stood up for it. They should have stood up by their people and forgotten about 1 year's profitability. So be it, let them have a loss for 1 year. At the end of that 1 year, they will still gain the loyalty of these people forever. And this is where people have been let down tremendously. And I've got a huge problem with the way the corporate world has handled it.
Let me tell you, I personally agree with you, because that's the kind of sentiment that resonates with me. It is extremely important to waive certain section of your own individual profits and gains when it comes to ensuring that somebody else's livelihood can be saved. Very, very important. And I personally applaud people who don't make it way too much of a pompous method to have it projected in media. But I can list down a lot of individuals to you otherwise who are doing their level best to ensure that employees and their jobs could be retained. But yes, I do agree that if leaders take charge and ensure, and you care enough, it's as simple as making sure that you care enough of the people. Yes, I wouldn't say that it could be as personal as family. Somehow, I would say it could be as easy as knowing that they are humans and they have family. like we have a family. Just by thinking that, it ensures that you make sure that you care enough. And that is what is, it's as simple as that. For you to care enough for them, make sure and remember that they have families too, like you have one. So that's what would be my individual advice also for anybody who is looking at those malicious ways during this pandemic. But yes, I agree with you in my personal opinion that it's important to care enough for your team, to care enough for your people, so that they also continue this kind of a sentiment. It's very important, and that's how you will, like you rightly mentioned, you will gain loyalty, and you will gain an employee for life. That is for sure.